I've not found a solution like that. But what's likely is that one is, or the other is right. Those are two possibilities. The third one is neither of them is right. Now, you were being told, and rightly so, by a professor, under that, you must begin to think tank. If you have not begun, you must begin. And he did not say that you may begin. If I remember his word, he said it's a must. For as long as you are in this world, it's your responsibility. Perhaps what I can add, just to emphasize what he was saying, is that all of you, without exception, who are in this room, are taking over from older generations like myself and Professor and others. And don't say, no, with me I'm not going to take over from you, you all keep your thing. No. You must. For as long as you are here, you have to shift forward and take charge of the affairs of not only your family, but your community and your country, and indeed Africa. So that's an inevitable. Now, you who is supposed to take over, the challenge you should have and focus on now is, are you ready? That's what. It's not about whether, no, you will. And the time is now. The only question you should ask yourself is, are you ready? You know, I sometimes also like to remind younger generations that the major difference between us and you is that the stage of life where you are, we have been there. I was a student like you at one time, but you have not been where I have been. That's the difference. So when I look at you, I know what it is to be your age, but you don't know what it is to go through the stages that the older generations have gone through. So when I stand in front of you, I see it as part of my historical role to talk about certain things that are coming your way as part of preparing you. But in order to do that successfully, we need certain basics. Again, that very nice word, basics. If I ask anyone here, is there a medical student here? Medical student? Then what are you doing here? Pardon? You are doing what? No, it's okay, I know. What you are doing, this double degree called MDCHB, Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery. In the lab here? Okay. What year? 4. Very good. With the exception of the young man over there, the rest of you, if somebody now decides to say, okay, you want a job? Very good. There's a few jobs available. There's the job of chief surgeon available in Makerere, in Mulabo Hospital. Please have it. Appointment letter is here. Of course, there is an exciting side to it because you immediately go and say, how much is it? That one is exciting. But immediately you report to work, everybody stands at attention and looks at you, waiting for instructions. You have to tell them what to do. Not only that, but most of what is done in surgery, you have to do it. nurse will come with a whole tray full of instruments. The patient is there, and she stands in front of you with the instrument. It's you to decide which instrument you need. Then secondly, the salary doesn't look so nice after all. Because it comes with a responsibility you are not prepared for, you are not trained for. And this is the problem we face in life. We take over situations, sometimes we find ourselves thrust into situations for which we are not prepared. I look at the debates on social media. I am on those things also. Actually, Professor, I'm even on Facebook. Yes. You are surprised, first of all, you think, how can this old federation know these things? You don't know Facebook. But some of us go there to look at you and to see what you are saying. Much of what I see worries me. The level of debate is very disappointing. Definitely, we were talking about groups. You put me in a certain group. Did you notice that I left? I don't know whether you noticed. Yeah, check. I left. I stayed there. The first day I was excited. I said, oh, this is nice. So somebody put a good question. Then I said, no, give us more information. Because I thought it was an intellectual debate. The next few hours, I looked at what was being posted. After 2 days, I said, I don't belong. Because what was going to happen is that we are going to have an impersonal discussion with the people who don't know who I am, and probably who will not agree with me. And they would form certain opinions of me, to the extent that maybe next time we meet, they will say, oh, so this is the food. So to protect myself, I'm sorry, I had to withdraw. I said, until I meet them, so that I talk to them, and we understand each other. But the debate on that group is very pedestrian. I was not surprised when you yourself complained about the level of debate in your comments. But I am not entirely surprised. I'm disappointed, yes, but not too surprised. Because why would you expect a person perfectly perform surgery when you have not trained them? So, Commissioner, I must register my gratitude and thanks to you for organizing this sort of
Asante sana.
And I could see how you were listening to Professor. I was very happy. Because there are many things you need as basics to help you. For instance, you were not there a few years ago. You were born recently. Many things happened before you. Somebody should tell you about those things. None of us was born 155 years ago. When what Professor was quoting happened. And Professor, that thing you are talking about, Lord Macaulay, I have it here. What Professor was talking about, it's right here. It's part of this which I prepared to talk about. When people say that those Africans, the only way to control them and defeat them is to change their education and their culture. Two things. Nobody say, let's go and shoot them. Nobody say, let's go and kill them. No. They say, if you want to control the African, enter their brains. Change the way they think, and you will have them. Make them think they are Paul instead of Odawu. Now you understand my rebellion. That That they are Odawu, but they are Paul first, and then Africans later. And you call it fashion. Don't tell them why you are renaming them. No. Tell them that that's how the modern world is. And that without that name, they will not go to heaven. I have been around some countries in the world. How comes there are Christians in other countries and they don't have European names? Why must it be me, an African, to have a European name as a passport to heaven? There was an Egyptian called Boutros Ghali. He became, at one time, was the first African to be Secretary General of the United Nations. An Egyptian Coptic Christian. They have Christians, they are called Coptic. All his three names were Egyptian names. He died a few years ago. I'm very sure he's in heaven. There was another one. There is. This time, this one is still alive. More recently, I'm sure you know the name. Ban Ki-moon. The three names. Ban Ki-moon. 3 Korean names. And he's a born-again Christian. And you know what happens when you are born again? The right-hand side of the book is there. Very staunch Christian. No European name, no Asian name, no African name. Because he's an Asian, he has Korean names. And not even just Asian, not Chinese names. These are Korean names. But for us, we are told that in order to go to heaven, you must have either an Arab name or a European name. And it's interesting that in Africa, depending on who colonized you, even the European name was determined according to who colonized you. So some of us are going to heaven as Frenchmen. Others are going to heaven as Englishmen and women. There are others who are going to heaven as Dutchmen and women. If it's just about a name, European name, then why don't you let me choose? Britain, you colonized me, but let me choose an Italian name. Why? Why not? The whole mission was stated by this gentleman. He said, if you want to control, then change the education. And the beginning of education is the name you are given as soon as birth. So many of us are adults now. I can see the majority of you here have just entered adulthood. And your journey through adulthood, many of you may be finding or will find yourselves in crisis of identity. You're not sure whether you are African or an English woman. In the morning, you are tussling between being a French woman and an English woman. At midday, you're wondering whether you are a German or an Italian. And by nightfall, when the African sun sets, you begin wondering whether you should sleep in Africa or go to New York. That's the crisis many of you will go through. And I see many of you, because of the system that was put in place by these chaps, many of you have become engulfed in a system that you probably don't even understand. But it has affected you so much that you're in crisis. If you try to speak like me, then you are not educated. But if you speak like this, then it's a little better. Struggling to speak like a Muslim because you are no longer satisfied. You are not comfortable with being African. You are being told that the African is a second-class citizen. And I sometimes ask people, do you know why certain people speak the way they speak? You are our children, you are Africans, biologically. But ideologically, some of you are lost. Now, if you have a wide nose like mine, when you breathe in, you have no problem, is it? Because the nose is available, that's its function. And the wider, the better, isn't it? But when somebody puts that idea in you, that you must struggle to be as European as possible, then you even start speaking like people with narrow noses. And I sometimes tell people that while sitting talking to a friend next to you, just hold the bridge of your nose and squeeze gently and see what happens. You develop an accent. Without struggling. In fact, if you have been struggling, just squeeze your nose and naturally you have an accent. Because you're not breathing properly.
Asante sana.
Now, you know, of course, some of those countries can be very cold. And during winter, if you keep breathing like in Africa here, all the air goes in to get pneumonia. So over generations, the human body is adapted to the environment. So the nose is narrow, and then they develop accents, and you think it's a style. It's a problem. But all this is part of the culture, mental culture. We find ourselves imitating everybody else because we are told that we are inferior and that the closer you approximate those who are mentally derailed us, the better human being you will be. We're even told that we are the residues of humanity. And yet everybody knows that the oldest archaeological findings were found here, right here in Africa. In fact, it is no longer very good. In our days, we were told it was well. But now, there are all the remains that have been found, not in Tanzania, but right here in Uganda. The oldest humanoid remains discovered on Earth to date were discovered in Karamoja. And these are the remains of a young lady, the oldest human being whose remains have been found. So I sometimes wonder, I reflect, and I share this with you. I want somebody to help me to do research. Maybe those are the remains of Adam's wife, Eve, the first woman. She could have been a Karamoja. Oh, yeah. But in the lessons that you are taught, the syllabus that we are taught in history, they give us the impression that we are the last on the human scale. No, we are the first. Hitler, in fact, in his ascent to power, he came up with a very interesting pseudo-analysis. I don't think it was proper scientific finding. These were just political gimmickry. And people swallowed it. That there were the several races, human races in the world. And he said the most superior race, he created a race called Aryans. Now, Aryans are people who the group of people who eventually became Germans and Belgium and all those other countries. They were historically called Aryans. So he said those are the most superior, meaning the Germans are number one. Then number two, Caucasians. That means other Europeans and the like. Number three, Asiatics. Those are Asians. Number four, Negroids. That is you and me. Now, number five, he created a category which he called the problem. Those are the Jews. So, on Hitler's scale, I think that's the only time a Caucasian has ever put Africans above a group of Caucasians. We were number four, and the Jews were the last. That they were just a problem. They were not a human race, they were a problem. Hitler was elected. Hitler was elected to power. And he was elected by the youth brigades in Germany, whom he had whipped up and told, you are the superior race. And the youth in Germany elected him. Today, when you mention the name Hitler, even in Germany, nobody names their babies Hitler. Nobody. He's only mentioned in history books. But even in Germany, nobody wants to identify as the relative or a descendant of Hitler. But the point is, he was elected. He was elected. Wow. So this issue of understanding reality is extremely crucial as you begin your journey and as you consolidate your positions as the generation in charge. Therefore, remember a few points. As has been said, this paper, the longer one, will be given to you. But the first thing I want us to remember is what kind of mindset you have. And when you've discovered the type of mindset you have, ask yourself, how did it develop? As a young person in Uganda today, I see it on social media. I feel like crying. I see people who are not even born 30 years ago, some not even 25 years ago, analyzing Uganda's history and saying that the best president Uganda has ever had is Idi Amin. I'm fortunate to be one of those who have seen all of it since independence. But when somebody talks like that, I can't even get annoyed with him or her. I just feel pity. Because that is a typical example of ignorance. And the only advice I give is, please, do research. Read. And when you are reading, be open-minded. Be objective about what you are doing. And ask those who are there. And use your own independent mind to arrive at the conclusion of the correct answer. Maybe Idi Amin was himself a victim of our history. Because by the time the British left in 1962, Idi Amin, who was a P3 dropout, had been allowed to rise up to the rank of Sergeant Major in the army. Now, Sergeant Major is a non-commissioned officer who doesn't wear these things on the shoulder, no. They wear something on the arm. You have seen them?
Yes.
And the British advised as they were exiting. They said, this chap, they used to call him this chap. This chap, the British soldier under command. But please, do not ever give him command. The British knew that Idi Amin was a good soldier, but under command. And they advised that don't promote him to a commissioned officer. Soon after independence, we promoted him from lieutenant in 62. By 66, 4 years later, he was a colonel. Now, between lieutenant and colonel, second lieutenant, captain, major, lieutenant colonel, and colonel. 6 ranks in 4 years. B3 dropout, no training, nothing. By 1966, he was the chief of staff of the Uganda Army. Here, he was a colonel. But here, he was a sergeant major. So that's why I say, I think to some extent, he was a victim of circumstances. Because how can you be promoted to chief surgeon in Malawi when you have never trained? It's the same thing. The leadership. How can you become the chief of staff? Chief of staff is like head boy. I hear some people here, ministers and guild presidents, that you are there. But nobody has prepared you for that position. So the tragedies that befell Uganda as a consequence of that, these are lessons for you. Can you put your own security, your country's security, in the hands of somebody who does not have the basics of understanding the management of society? And you give him the most dangerous component of the state, the army. It's up to you. Can see all of you are looking at to get here. You're wondering which category he belongs to. But I'm sure if he has not introduced himself, you will get to know. And maybe I can comfort you by saying, even before he introduces himself, that he has also seen this place. Long before you were born, we were here. So don't worry. That we have taken care of. What I'm saying is, when it comes to your turn, how will you handle these things? And the way to go is to realize that leadership is scientific. It's not accidental. And it's not an emotional thing. To successfully lead people requires a few things. One, always have a warm heart. Be warm-hearted. Relate with people. Smile. Be in touch. Be warm-hearted. When people see you, what is the first emotional reaction? Do they smile immediately they see you? Or they blink twice and say, yeah, man has come. Two, while having a warm heart, please, in leadership, always keep a cool head. Cool head. As you are smiling, smile with the lips, not with the brain. I don't know whether you get what I'm talking about. I see Ugandans, many, When the Ugandan smiles, they smile, everything smiles, even the air is smiling. And that is how we have no secret. Because when you see somebody like, oh, you might do. By the way, I became broke. Now you begin talking of things that are supposed to be your secret. Leadership means always be cool-headed. Know what to say, when and where and how. Know what to say, when, where and how. And of course, why. And to who. But you find Uganda, you meet a stranger on the street, say, hey, how are you? My brother, you look like a Uganda. In fact, you know, for us here, you begin to tell me. Now, the person who was going the other way, all of a sudden discovers you a huge source of information. Then he says, in fact, you want to know some more? Even when the person says, okay, thank you. No, I still have something to tell you. You know, even the other day, we recruited so many soldiers, even defense secrets, you tell them. You see, it was, you know, listen, some time back, some years when I was moving around, I worked with the Patriotism program some years ago. I was in Hoima, and it was just shortly after we had announced that oil and so on, and there was a lot of excitement. I reached Hoima, and the hotel where I stayed, I saw a group of Zoom. And I inquired, because I'm always curious. I asked some of the hotel staff, they are Christians. They are here on a crusade. I said, yeah, okay. Where are they from? Oh, America. Now, next morning, when I was driving down, I stopped somewhere to buy a newspaper. And there were again another group of whites. So I listened. They were also speaking like Christians. So I greeted them with a smile on the lips, but with a very cool head. And asked them a few questions. I discovered they were also another group, not the other one, also on a Christian crusade. And I said, this Banyoro have been here for a long time. Why is it that all of a sudden there are so many crusades? Shortly after Uganda announces that there is oil in Burio. All of a sudden, people realize that, oh, Banyoro needs saving, they are really going to hell, please let's go and help them. Why weren't they of interest before the oil? So, therefore, what is the primary interest? Is it the souls of the Banyoro or the oil? But if it had been somebody else, you'd have met those very godly Christians and you'd have said, oh, my brother, sister, praise God. Thank you very much for coming. That's the normal Ugandan. You will not question. But I'm saying, begin to question. Begin to observe things. Why am I saying this? Because you must learn to relate things and relate them to other things. If you see a shadow as you are walking, please look behind to confirm that it's yours. Because you're not the only one who has a shadow. So when you see a shadow, you say, that's mine. It may be somebody else. Follow me. Learn to question things. Learn to relate things. Never be all trusting. Because in the world that you are inheriting, there are no permanent friends. There are only permanent interests. And you must define your interests as a Ugandan. That these are my interests. You know, if you have money in your pocket, and you go to the market and you don't know what you want to buy, you'll buy anything. But if you ever have money in your pocket, don't leave your house without, first of all, jotting down, what do I want from the market? I want rice, so many kilos, this type of rice, 2 beans. Write down. And stick to your shopping list, because those are your interests. Don't reach the market and somebody who is selling something else talks you to buy what they are selling and diverts you from what took you to the market. So, can you sit in the groups that I'm happy you are forming? I'm suggesting one of the first topics in your think tank. What are our national interests? What are the national interests of Uganda? Because you can't talk about building a nation with whose interests you're not clear about. And once you define your interests, then whenever any issue comes up, discuss it in relation to your interests. Can I suggest an item on that list? Can I? For instance, I think peace is a national interest. Isn't it? So once peace is of national interest, then when you get to any big discussion about security matters, you refer to your national interest and say, our interest is to have peace. Then you will not join the group of people who are saying, hey, now, it's not in your interest. And that's what I mean by always being cool-headed. Don't get excited. And one of the weaknesses of being your age is that energy Professor was talking about. You easily get excited, you get emotional. And our role is to advise you. That energy is good, but direct it, control it. Don't allow your temper to get involved in decision making. In fact, never make a decision if you have lost your temper. First go and find it and come together and make a decision. So if you ever lose your temper, don't make a decision, because find it first. If you're confronted with a challenge and you lose your temper, my advice would be, put down the pen, get out of the office, and walk while fuming along the way. If you feel like kicking something, kick a few stones on the road, but never make a decision when you have lost your cool. You're likely to make mistakes. Then when you recover, when you calm down, come back and take a second look. You're likely to make a better decision. And this is both in private life and in your public life. It's a principle in leadership. So, cool head, warm heart, cool head. But also, once you decide on what must be done, please let it be done, because it's the right thing. For instance, sometimes leadership commands you to arrest a person. You may be the DPC, District Police Commander, and people come and report somebody who have done something against the law. You investigate, your officers investigate, then they bring to you a report that Afande, it's true, this person stole a goat. Then you ask, who is he? He's here, sir. And you discover that that's your brother. That's where now leadership comes in. You should not begin to say, no, please, this is my brother. How can you bring my brother? No, your brother is a thief. You are not arresting your brother, you are arresting a thief who happens to be your brother. So once a decision is made in leadership, then you must execute it in cold blood. So warm heart, cool head for the analysis, warm heart for relating to people, cool head for thinking, but when a decision, something must be done, then you should be cold-blooded about it. The other thing I want to touch on is that in order to understand things correctly, use the following approach. First of all, receive information. That is through senses, your senses. Sensation. Receive as much information about the situation as possible. Sensation. Or gathering data. You call it what you prefer. Then two, form some initial ideas about that situation. But do not make decisions or act at that stage. Once you have formed those initial ideas, investigate your idea. Check your idea, is it correct? And once you have investigated the idea and confirmed that the idea is correct, then you go to the next stage, that is conclusion. It's only when you have a proven idea or proven ideas that you should now proceed to the next stage of making a decision. And of course, after making a decision, then you can act. And the last one is you may be required to communicate to others. So that's the sequence. But unfortunately, very many people rush to act. As soon as they look, they see, they conclude and act. You have had people say, they come, look at you and say, you man, you look like a thief. Then he shifts here and looks at you from this. In fact, you are a thief. The next thing, they take action. They have not confirmed whether the idea that you are the thief is correct or not. Good leadership demands that you are patient, go through those stages, confirm that you have understood the situation correctly before you decide what to do, what action to take. The other point I want to emphasize briefly, you'll read it in detail, is that there are certain principles that you must use in your process of trying to understand the world around you. Number one, always be objective. Don't allow your personal bias to influence you. Objectivity is a principle that must guide you at all times in your quest to understand the world and use that understanding to make decisions. Be objective. The opposite of objectivity is subjectivity. I hate this, so what? If you hate the person, does that concern the leadership situation you are in? Because if you say, I'm not going to listen to that fellow, I don't like him or her. Maybe the fellow has the best idea in the room. So your personal bias against that person should not cloud your mind. Similarly, don't go with everything somebody you like or love says. Because sometimes they say, give you wrong idea. But you say, oh, you know this one, I like this one. It's okay, let me go with that. Look at the ideas, look at the piece of advice in its merit. Don't just say, because it's from so and so, therefore it's good. Look at it in its merit. Don't allow your personal feelings, personal relationships to come into the picture. The second principle is that as you come to take charge, as you come to be a responsible person, a leader, please, 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 without exception, strive to study and know the history of your country. And not just any story which somebody tells you. Find out the real history of our country. Like if you want to know the history of the Baganda, don't listen to this other story of Kintu and Nambi. That's not the story of Uganda. That they came from the east and they had a cow. That's not the correct story. Go into the history of Baganda, then you learn the issue of the Bantu immigrating into Uganda and so on and so forth. Then you know the truth. You want to know, for instance, who are the people who were in Uganda before the Bantu came? Because Uganda was not empty. Did the Baganda come from Central Africa? Did they? Somebody answer me. My friend with that jacket is not red. So my own answer to you is that you tell those people that mine is not red, it's maroon. Your problems are solved. Yes. What's your name? Are you Uganda? Huh?
My name is Lumu Moses.
Lumu. Now tell us, the Uganda, where did they come from?
According to traditions in Uganda.
Now, don't tell me according to, no. I want the facts.
Okay, the facts.
According, you say, you can even say according to me, that's better. Don't quote everything.
Okay, according to me, the Baganda are said to have come from Cameroon.
But it's okay. I think he's simply telling us what he has heard, isn't it? But what I am teasing you about is that what's your opinion about that story? You are mad. Don't you have an opinion? You're a human being, and every human being must have their own interpretation of stories, isn't it? Unfortunately, the education system that you are going through, which we all went through, they don't encourage us to have our own opinions. They always tell you that according to Professor Swan, so how about according to you? When will you ever be quoted? somewhere in your answer, you can also, and if you want first class, that's what you do. You quote all those authorities, then in the end you say, but from my own perspective, now give your own. If I'm the one marking, that's what gives you a first class. Because you have something of your own. You're not a parrot. When you hear a dog, you say, whoa, whoa. When you hear a cow, you say, meow. You know, how about you? Have your own. But you were saying that the Baganda is said to have come from Central Cameroon. But you see, that kind of story does not lead us to the true understanding of the origin of the Baganda. The Baganda didn't come from anywhere. They emerged right here in Uganda. Because they are not that there was some group of people somewhere, then they moved as Baganda. No. The Bantu, they were moving, there were different groups. That's why in different parts you find different groups today. In Bunyoro, the Bantu passed there. They are Bunyoro there. They are Baganda here. And so on, Basoga and so on. Up to the Zulu in South Africa. So you need to know what is the true story, what's the true history of our country. And it will even help in your discussions to guide the others. There is nothing like saying, I'm a pure Uganda, I'm a pure Uganda. None of us is pure. Because the other, where is my medical man? Should give us a lecture if you have time one of these days, or wherever you are, when you are in your think tanks. Give a lecture on how human beings are produced. Because many of us forget that, first of all, according to African culture, none of us is pure because you're a product of two different human beings. So what do you mean you're pure? And secondly, those two human beings are not supposed to be relatives. So where is your purity? But thirdly, even if you continue the argument that you are pure this and that, when you come to this room today, and if I was to pick anyone at random and ask your story, you discover you are not pure. For instance, which school did you go to? Where is your home district?
My home district is in Mitiana.
Mitiana. And the schools you went to, tell us.
I went to Mitiana Secondary School.
That's in Mitiana.
Before Mitiana Secondary School, I went to Banda Parents School.
Banda.
Primary.
Where is that?
That one is in Busuju.
Busuju.
Yes. After that,
Here.
Yeah, I went to Mitiana Secondary School.
You went back further.
I came here now to town.
To town?
Mitiana Secondary School.
Oh.
Yes. Then after Mitiana Secondary School, I came to Metropolitan International University.
Metropolitan. The man is a metropolitan. And then you say he's a pure Mugan. The friends you have in Metropolitan, tell me, who is your best friend?
My best friend is Metropolitan International University. He was from Sudan. He went.
My case is
called Omaon.
My story is here. This man has Sudanese ideas. Then you think he's a pure Mugan. He's the best. Remember, those are your best friends, meaning that ideologically there is a lot they have in common. So the man has Sudanese ideas, plus Mitiana ideas, plus a few Kampala ideas, and I suspect a few others also from around the world. And he's on the internet, he's reading ideas from South Africa, from Asia. How do you say he's a pure Muganda? Because being a Muganda is not biological, it is social. Isn't it? Some people argue that they have Muganda blood. Maybe in your discussion you include that. How many blood groups are there? Can you tell us? Human blood groups.
We have A.
Yes?
B.
B?
We have A plus, B plus, O.
No, don't go into those details. Don't forget about the rhesus factor, just the basic. A, B, See, now you've forgotten that, so you're in surgery. If I talked about scalpels, you know. There are four. A, B, A, B. How can you forget that? A, B is a group. Both factors, A, B. And then O, which has neither A nor B. So, those are the four. Whether you go to China, come to Uganda, go to Korea, wherever you go, those are the four groups. How about the Uganda group, blood group? Where is it? How about the Acholi one? You know, for me, my blood is Acholi and joking with me. Where is that? Which takes me? You know, for us, look, our blood is hot. What do you mean? Whose blood is cold? It's your head which is hot. You're not trying to keep it cool. It's not the blood. So what am I saying? That please study the history of our people so that we know each other. You may want to know, for instance, what is the history of our kingdoms? Because all the kingdoms in Uganda have a historical link to Bunyoro. Now, you guys who are struggling with the national unity, I am saying, as leaders, can you study our history and discover the common linkages that we have in that history? It will help you to build unity. First of all, it will remove this idea that we are very different from each other. When we discover that we are very closely linked. And then secondly, it will help you in building national unity. Uganda was founded by Kato Kimera. Have you ever heard of Kato Kimera? Where did he come from? Not just did he come from Bunyoro, he was in Bunyoro. He's the one who founded the kingdom of Uganda. And his descendants are the ones still ruling in Uganda. Now in Bunyoro, the royal family from which Kato Kimera came, they are Babito. And Babito are Luo origin. So what am I saying? That historically, if we talked about our history, by the end of the day, we will be greeting each other as brothers and sisters. We have all these interrelationships. Why is the king of Toro called Oyo? And Oyo in Lano means rat. Why is he called Iguru? The Omukama is called Iguru. Iguru means heaven in Luo. Who is the Munyoro? Huh? Hey, my friend, the surgeon, please. Can you stand up and help me again? Mpakwea? Aran. What does Aran mean? Thunder. If you go to Luo, they will tell you that Laro, you know you twisted it, it's Laro. Alari. Laro means to save. So Alari means I have saved you. But because of problems of pronunciation, you change it to Arari. What's that? No, we're still talking. There's another embargo, Amod. What does it mean? Who is the Lamu here? Somebody from Lamu or Acholi? Just one person, stand up. I know there's somebody. You're from Lamu? Very good. Just remain standing. Let's talk together. Yes. You say? Amot means the king. My friend Lam, come on. Come here. If I say Amoti, what have I said? What have I said? Ah? No, this thing is making noise. You can't hear. Means I greet you. Amoti means I greet you. It's a new word. And if Abori, that's another one. Abori. What does it mean? A cat. If I say Abori, no, this man also has forgotten. Yes, somebody is here. Help. Can you bring the microphone here? Somebody can help us. If I say Abori, what do I mean?
I've lied you in law. It's telling lies to someone.
Yes. Means I've deceived you. So, when a chief surgeon, if you want to know the meaning of the Bible, come to this man. Make friends with the law. Because the language of the purpose is entirely law. And the word parko. If I say park, what does it mean?
Praising.
To praise. And those are praise names. It's not accidental. These are historical linkages that when you study, this is what you should be invested in as patriots. Why should people tell us that Banyoro are different from Baganda? Why should they tell us that Anacholi must never greet a Munyoro? When the two are related. In fact, whenever they crown, the Banyoro crown Anomokama, they have to wait for Acholi royal chiefs. There are certain rituals which cannot be performed by any other person except certain Acholi royal chiefs in order to crown your Mukama in Bunyoro. These are historical reasons. When Kawaka Ronald Mutedi was crowned in Nagarabi here in Gudu, there is a hut that he entered, and then certain rituals are done which are top secret. And when he comes out, the king. So when he came out for the first time as the Kawaka, the first entertainment for Kawaka Ronald Mutedi was the Acholi royal dance known as Bola. This one is looking at me as if I've drank something. Suspects that there's something wrong. But I hope you are looking at me in positive surprise. So what am I simply saying? That you people, many young people tell us, challenge us, don't tell us those old stories of yours. History, these are your things. You are not going to understand yourselves until you go into that history. History is something you can't run away from. The surgeon there will tell you that when you go to hospital, this is a medical facility. When you say, they ask you, what's your name? You say, my name is Achim. They write Achim. And what's your problem? You say, I have a headache. The next thing that the doctor will do is history. If you read the history, then he starts asking you questions. What happened? Tell me, how did it start? That's history. Because you cannot make a diagnosis of Uganda's problems today until you know what caused those problems. And if you don't do that, you are likely to make mistakes. For instance, the commonest cause of a headache, you know? Let me give you that example. All of you have suffered from a headache, yes?
Constipation.
Constipation. Commonest, okay, it causes, but not the commonest. Yes. Dehydration. Okay? Causes, yes? Huh? Stress. Anything causes stress. Now, what particular cause of stress is the commonest? Huh? Overthinking. Now, I will come back to that. But the commonest cause of a headache is hunger. When you have not the person that did you take lunch? As soon as he comes, I have a headache. You say, oh, aspirin. Now, you give aspirin on an empty stomach. You're going to cause more problems. Go into the history. Ask simple questions. Did you have breakfast? The fellow will tell you no. Then you know for the last 13 hours, the fellow has not eaten. That could be the cause. So as you are talking, you give him a cup of tea. Let me come back. Let me have a cup of tea. If you're a good doctor, give a cup of tea, some sugar, milk. Then you go away for some 10 minutes. Come back. Say, how is my headache? Say, actually, doctor, it's improving. Then you know that the man was this. But you rush into taking charge of a country whose history you don't know. You'll make mistakes. Please listen to those who are there. But listen to them carefully, because some of us also have our biases. You may want to bias you. So learn to see, but get to know the history. And the third and last thing is that you learn the principle is that you learn to pick the issues that are of importance. Learn to identify the issues you should concentrate on. The main links, as I call them. Identify the main issues, the main links, and stick to those. Don't get lost in minor issues. So, 3 principles. Be objective. Always go historical, study history of situations. And 3, concentrate on the main issues that matter. And if you have those 3 principles, you will not be involved in politics of color. Earlier on, when you were interacting with the professor, I had some of the questions. This man was worried about his color. Now, what do I do? And you know, when he was talking, I looked at him. You see, the man has more serious problems. Because I don't know whether you've noticed that he's wearing other colors. He has black, yellow, and red. But he's not worried about the yellow. He's worried about the red on his jacket, not the red on his lap. What are you going to do with the red when it's a national color? And that's what I always tell people. You know, when we were in patriotism, I think I told you, we would buy t-shirts in the national colors, black, yellow, red. Now, in certain regions, like whenever we went to Lama, the red t-shirts would be the first to go. Do you remember? Now, when we would go to certain other areas, then the yellow disappears straight. Now, others, there are those who don't want either red or yellow, they go for black. You really see people suffering with the colors. And none of them remembers that these are our national colors. So what are we going to do? Do we burn the flag? To help you? What do we do? But what am I saying? That when you stick to issues that matter, you don't get diverted into politics of colors. You can't. You listen to the person. You don't look at what he's wearing. The fellow may be smart, wearing a nice suit, but is he also smart here? That's what matters. The main issue is what ideas you have, isn't it? Yes. So these principles would even help to address some of those issues. When you're in debate, first of all, go to a person, listen to them with an open mind. Pick the ideas. What are the main issues that person is talking about? But also, study that person's history. Now, once you do all those 3 together, then you should be able to make your own judgments from a very informed point of view. I always, if I had the PowerPoint presentation, I would have shown you some pictures, but I can refer to a few of them. Like on this issue of sticking to the main point, you find that we always get carried away by what we see. And, oh, my candidate is handsome. So what? Oh, this lady is very beautiful, this baby face. You make a decision on the basis of what a person looks like, not on the basis of the ideas in the head. I thought you were electing somebody on the basis of their idea. But many of us get excited about appearance. So what is the main issue? Is it the suit the candidate is wearing or the idea? What is the main issue? Today you're wearing what you're wearing. Tomorrow I suspect all of you, when you get out of your rooms, you will be dressed differently, isn't it? Now, if I met you today and you're wearing a very nice jacket, tomorrow if I meet you in a t-shirt, should I change my opinion of you because you have changed your t-shirt? I think let's identify what are the main issues that we are concerned with, and we stick to those. Lastly, I want to remind you all that, and you will see this in the paper that will be given to you, that as you take charge, as you prepare yourself to take charge of the affairs of not only your own personal life but of society in general, you should know that there is a reason for everything. Always look for the reason. Whenever something happens, or whenever you observe something, please endeavor to find out the reason. Not somebody's opinion, but the real reason. And this is the problem with politics. Oftentimes, people substitute their opinions for facts. One of the few times I have been forced to, I told you I'm always looking at what's being discussed on Facebook and other platforms. But there was a discussion going on Facebook, and I found myself for the first time forced to respond, because the person who was involved is an elder woman. I don't want to mention the name. And I thought this person should be guiding you, the younger generation. I could see on the group, there were many young people, and they were all respecting the opinion of that elder. And that elder was telling lies. And I came out and I was not kind to people. Because I think it's very highly responsible for any of us elders to tell you lies. You know, we have just taken delivery of the first 2 Bombardier jets. And I'm told that some people named their children Pinenyo and Bombardier. I saw that on Facebook. That there's a new name, Pinenyo and Bombardier. Shortly after that, you know, there were a lot of conspiracy theories. And that's the last thing I will question you about. Oh, these things are second hand. Oh, there are so many years. Oh, they are not even new. Oh, the airline belongs to Museveni. Oh. So this elder, instead of guiding, he was the one who was misleading the young people on the Facebook page, that he even picked some website somewhere and said, you see, this airline has ever been bought by schools. I mean, this aircraft was bought by a certain other, and I tell him that, no, this is not proper. Because an airline is not a border. An aircraft is not a border. Every aircraft anywhere in the world is known. And if you want to know the fact, just get the numbers of that aircraft, Google them, and everything about that aircraft, including the current aircraft in Uganda. If you see, you know, they always have numbers And I ask you really to cross-check this. Whether it's a military plane, any aircraft, just get its number, Google it. And all the facts about that aircraft are there. There's no aircraft which you can paint from white to red and then pretend that's a nib. It's not possible. But this man was misleading you. So, I was not kind to him because I think you deserve better from us. The last thing is to caution you. We have a disease in Uganda. I had it here earlier on. It's good to aspire for political office. It's good to aspire for leadership. But please don't go there with the wrong motives. Because I have met many young people who think that politics can be a career. There was a young person who was in Kumba University many years ago. And I kind of became his mentor. I trained him sometime. I went to Kumba College, I talked to him. So he kept in touch. And would always come and seek guidance. Now when he was completing, when he had just sat his final exams, he came to me in my office. And he told me he had finished and was sure the result would be fine. I said, oh, very good, congratulations. And then I said, now what next? He told me, oh, I want now to pursue my career. I said, which career? In politics. I was sitting behind my desk. When he said that, I looked at him and I saw a young man who was about to get to talk. So I came from behind my desk and sat with him for the next 3 hours. We talked. I had to put some sense in it. There is no career called politics. It's not there. You can have a career in medicine, you can have a career in law, you can have a career in teaching. Those are careers, yes. But to say that you are at university today because your career is going to be politics, that is to dig your own grave. Because you are not going to be able to control many things in the political arena. There was also a young man earlier, before this one I was telling you a moment ago. Another one much earlier. He did law at Makerere here. He finished, and somehow, immediately he finished, we went into the Constituent Assembly elections. So he went home and stood, and people elected him. They said, you're a lawyer, you just finished, you young man, go and represent us. So the man from University Makerere here, straight to Parliament. And then he went through CA, he finished. Now, in 1996, he decided to stand for Parliament. And he was not elected. So, he suddenly found himself out of a job. And you know, when you've been very high up there, you are not easily employable. Not many people can employ you. So he struggled with life for some time, and he became frustrated. And then he joined a group which was known as PAF. Parliamentary Forum, yes, PAF. Parliamentary Forum. Now, this was a group of politicians who were inclined towards opposing government and so on. And he joined that group and started campaigning for them. So I was an RDC at that time. So one time, he happened to be coming from the district where I was. So he came to my office. He said, now, Mr. Dauk, I know you must be wondering what led me to join this group, but I want to tell you the fact is that my colleagues disappointed me. I said, which colleagues? He said, all these NRA people. I listened to him. I said, like who? Like Area Category, the Area Category. Who was that? national political commissar at that time, who was particularly bitter with him. He says, I even went to my colleague Elia Kategaya and he didn't help me to get a job. I got annoyed. I looked at him. After some time, I made some diagnosis. So I again got up from behind my desk and sat with him. Then I told him, I was almost mentioning the name. I don't want to tell you the name. I told him, you know how old Elia Kategaya is? He told me, but we agreed that he was definitely older than both of us. And I told him that I have been working in government for some time, directly under the supervision of the Right Honorable Elia Kategaya. I have never referred to him as my colleague. That's your first problem. Because you sat next to each other in the CA, now you thought that since your shoulders touched, you are now colleagues. Generationally, there's a big difference. And I'm talking to you, young people, please network. For us, your elders, you can be your support. But your colleagues are around you. Just look around you. Those are your colleagues. With me, well, you may have that. Don't deceive yourself that we are really the same. We are not. Because my friends, I have different friends, you have different friends. You have different interests, I have other interests. Me, I'm thinking of retiring, you are thinking of starting. So when we sit, there are limited areas where we can interact. I can guide you, yes, you can learn from me. That's it, isn't it? But do not make mistakes early in life without building yourself a social base. My advice would be, yes, go into elective politics, but for goodness sake, build your own personal base. You must have a personal base, and this base must have two components. Number one, the economic. Ensure you have something to stand on. Number two, social. Ensure you have social capital. Have a reputation. And when you build a reputation, never lose it. Because once you lose it, you will never regain it. The moment people say, you man, you are leaving your phone here. Don't you see so and so is around? You are finished. The moment people lose trust in you, that's it. You will never regain their trust. Social capital. Be trustworthy. And when people look up to you, ensure that for the rest of your life, every day, work to retain that social capital. Not only retain, but add to it. But by all means, avoid losing any of your social capital, because you will never recover. Those two are the foundations upon which you can now stand. And then you say, I can go into the third component of life, the political. Don't rush into the political without having somewhere to stand, a fallback position. When you are not elected, what happens? Or if you are elected and then your term runs out and you are not re-elected, what happens next? Much of the frustration I see in young people today is poor choices, making poor choices. I have a master's degree. I am government hopeless. I don't have a job. Then you ask him, okay, master, what did you study? I have a master's in architecture. No. Yes. When they say those with the masters stand up, you also stand up. But now yours, what's the content? Architecture, that you speak a lot of architecture. How many jobs are there for TESO speakers? Recently, the president inaugurated a factory in Soroti, the fruit juice making factory. They are not asking for people who speak TESO very well. They are asking for technical people, food scientists. So, The other thing you must be careful about is what skills, what knowledge you have, and what is its relevance, what is its link to the market, the job market. What can you do that is attractive to a prospective employer? You may not have it in your first degree, but work towards acquiring certain employable skills. If you have been doing a degree course that is not necessarily quickly marketable, then immediately you finish, make sure you work towards improving or acquiring certain employable skills. And never stop reading. Never say you are tired, that your brain is full, because you are just a liar. The human brain has the capacity to store knowledge equivalent to 1,500 laptop computers. How many of you has ever filled one laptop computer? So you have no excuse. Scientific findings show that even the most knowledgeable human being who has ever lived, by the time of their death, they have only used 10% of their brain. You have no excuse. Please learn and continue learning. And never wake up and go to bed with either the same knowledge or less. Make sure that every day by the time you are retiring, you have learned something new throughout your life. Either a piece of knowledge or a skill, or preferably both. And that is how to manage this world. But for goodness sake, learn to differentiate between the truth and people's opinions. Like the other one who said that Idi Amin is the best president Uganda has ever had. That's just an opinion. It's factually not correct. Look for the truth. And what will guide you to look for the truth are some of the hints I've given you will guide you. But the most important is you learn why things happen and how they happen. Just to why is Uganda quarreling with Rwanda? Don't talk about first understand what is behind that. Why is it that Uganda is quiet? Why is it that Saddam Hussein was created by the Americans to fight Iran? First of all, the Americans supported the Shah in Iran because Iran had discovered oil. So the Shah in Iran was their friend. When they saw Iran was becoming restless, the Shah had lost popularity, they propped up Saddam Hussein in Iraq in order to contain Iran. Then Iran and Iraq fought each other for 9 years. They destroyed each other. Now when the two stopped fighting and tried to recover, then Saddam Hussein, who had acquired bad manners, was now wanted to fight everybody, didn't want peace. Was unhappy because there was an outbreak of peace. So he now was looking for other fights. So the Americans now found that Saddam Hussein had become a liability, so they hit him. They destroyed Iraq. What was the reason? Up to today they are there. Iraq is an oil-producing country. They ensured that Egypt signed a peace deal with Israel. Why? Egypt is the most powerful Arab country, the most strategic. Libya, which was recently destroyed, is an oil country. Venezuela is being destroyed. It has the largest oil deposits in the world. Look at that. Scan the world horizon and come back home and ask yourself, when Uganda announced that we have oil, what is the implication of that to our national security? These are the questions you should be discussing in your think tanks. And if you want my opinion, be available. But thank you very much for listening to me. I hope I have not been a waste of time. Once again, I have chosen not to tackle the paper as I normally tackle it because I didn't have the time. Please read it, and I hope you perform one of the pieces of literature for your think tanking. But otherwise, I am very hopeful that with these initiatives starting, I think Commissioner will be on the right track. And Uganda should be safe in the hands of these young people. But warm heart, cool head, and always stick to doing the right thing. Thank you very much.
Asante sana.
In the interest of time, let's allow 2 questions. Maybe those who are the top earlier, if you say something, and then let's have the lady, otherwise I will have trouble. Again, what are you? We have someone else. Another lady. Yes, there's a lady.
Good evening. I'm Moses Patriotic, specializing in accounting. First and foremost, I want to talk about the uniform language for Uganda. Because one of the speakers, the other speaker said, having a uniform language does not do good to us. But as our motto says, for God and my country, I will trace back to the Bible, whereby some tribe that tried to build a tower to reach God, it used one language. So whereby God, to deter them to do something strange, he had to change the language. So if you want to do better in the unknown environment, we need a uniform language as Uganda, not to call on the Swahili, because according to the rates, they say 36% of 37% is Luganda, where many people understand it. And the other thing is, I'll talk about the employment. The red color and the yellow color can come into contact. Why? Because if you're a child and then it's raining and somebody comes and gives you an umbrella, it means that person loves you a lot. That's what the red color is doing to the people, because it's trying to address what they have at heart. And that's what the government is determining. Because if you look at the rates, most of the unemployed youths are in Uganda. That's the world fact. So it's better, because when you go to the government institutions, you will find somebody who is at the age of 65, still in the office. What are you still doing there? Because the Bible says, the elders will have dreams, and then the young will have visions. So if you still have a vision, do you want me to put my vision in action at the age of 50? No, it's impossible. So maybe the government has to come into action to do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Charity. For me, it's time to appreciate, first of all, we as the youth, we still have a lot of challenges. But I've been in so many gatherings, like associations with the youth, but we have our best motives, for example. If you call a youth come for a gathering like this, one question is there money? Now, is it because something was planted into us? I'm bringing this one because of what people ask elsewhere and here also. Now, if your dad knows you cannot come to greet him unless he gives you something, what do you think he is having in his mind? Unless we change our perspective towards everything we see, I I think there's nothing we can do. Now my question is, we as the youth, we have tried sometimes. We gather, we make some, there's some committed youth, but some old people come up to mentor us, but they don't follow us sometimes, then we give up. You know, sometimes we are many youth in Uganda, and then the few who come up have some motive for their ideology, but some many youth now will put us back. So I urge you, people who are leaders, to already come up to us whenever called upon, because most of the times you never show up. Thank you.
Okay. Moses Kiruma. We talked about national language and enjoyment. Those are the two main things. But I want to add more information before I answer. I want to give ourselves more information, then we discuss it in a broader context. The world has been in existence for billions of years, yes. But what is now generally accepted is mankind, human beings, emerged and have been around for about 2 million years. Give or take, whatever the exact figure, I don't know, but we have been here for a very long time also. From the time the first human beings that seem to have been around Karamoja and Olubai were here, until 1986, the population of Uganda had risen over millions of years, had risen from 0 to 13.5 million, 14 million. From 1986 to date, we're talking about 33 years, the population of Uganda has risen from 14 million to 40 million. 26 million in our population, at least. Of course, it's more because there are deaths and births and so on. But about 26 million. In other words, more than half of the population of Uganda today has been born since 1986. For millions of years, we managed to reach 14 million. In 33 years, you have shot up to 40 million. That's part of our problem. It's a success story, but every success story comes with its own challenge. So the first mistake, our generation, me and all these people here, the first mistake we made was that we have produced very many children. You. We are very hopeless fellows. We produced you. How could we have done that? So that's the first serious mistake, and we must be held accountable for producing you. Secondly, after producing you, we came up with a funny program that most of our children were dying of immunizable diseases. So after producing you, we immunized all of you. So you didn't die. Now you can see, you produce, then make another mistake. Instead of leaving them to die, so you have all grown up. Now, then we make the mother of all mistakes. We educate all of you. So, Commissioner, we are responsible for this. When these fellows start demanding for jobs, they have a point. Because we are responsible for bringing them here. When we joined Wakere, there was one university. Today you are here, a small group, less than half the universities of Uganda are here. There are more than 42 universities now. And everybody has a degree, including those with masters and others. So, my son, while you want to talk about this issue, let's understand the historical perspective. That some of these problems have literally exploded in our faces. And the truth of the matter is that the economy of the country has not adjusted sufficiently to accommodate all of us. Which means that we must shift away from the traditional thinking. For instance, you are saying that you're 65 years old, you are still there. What are you doing there? Yes, that is true. But you see, when you look at every developed society in the world, very few people are employed in government. The structure of the economy is the problem. That the colonial economy, which we have not yet sufficiently transformed, was designed in such a way that when you went to school, you were being prepared to work in government. In the modern world, it can't be, it's not sustainable. For instance, right today as we are talking, we have more than 450,000 graduates in Uganda. The total number of government jobs available is about 400,000. So even if all of us went home today and you took over, not all of you will get employed. And next year there is another 100,000 coming, plus 200,000 from other tertiary institutions. Altogether, 300,000 youth enter the job market every year. This is a huge national problem. But the good thing is that it's a good problem. We're talking about employable people, educated people, young and energetic. So yes, we must fold our hands and think tank and begin to say, how do we create jobs? I don't know whether you have realized, have you noticed? Have you been following the president? Every time he appears, he's talking about the economy. He's opening a factory, he's talking about this, he's talking about wealth creation. He knows that the real challenge we have now is not this piece of colors. Colors are not our problem. The problem is how do we restructure and transform the whole economy. We now have how many degrees districts? From your coordinating. So if you reduce by those you duplicate, you have about 137, I think. 137 districts. So let us decide that the people in this room all be appointed RDCs today. You invited 150. So we can't even employ all of you as RDCs. Even if we decided that now the young people are going to sack all the RDCs and employ them, we can't solve the problem. There is one job for president. It's occupied, as you know. Members of Parliament, 300. How many of you come into the job market every year? 300,000. Parliament, only 300. So what do we do? So you see how somber analysis helps you. When you are sitting and think tanking, you look for those statistics. Is the problem really this old man called Udao who is refusing to give his job? Then in some of our cases, we have another problem. You may want to retire, but they will look around for somebody to replace you. They can't. Yes, you ask the brigadier here. I work with the National Farmers Leadership Center. But whenever he has programs like this, he has to look for us. There you come, there are people who can handle this thing. And we are not doing. So I am not here because I want a job. I am here because I have a job to do. I don't know if you get the difference. There are situations like that where certain people are there because society needs them. So when you are doing your analysis, I think you should focus on the real challenge, the economy. How do we grow this economy and by so doing, grow jobs. Recently, the president opened 8 factories in one day, in Buikwe, I think, and Jinji. In that one day, he was inaugurating 5,000 jobs in one day. Now, multiply that by 100. If we had, instead of 8, if we had 800 such factories, we'll be talking about 500,000 jobs. Now we'll be talking. Those are direct jobs in the factory. But then there are other jobs along the value chain. Those who supply raw materials to the factory, those who are transporting the products, those who are selling the commodity. You may be talking about 1.2 million jobs. That's the real solution. And to me, this is the politics you should be discussing. Because even if you sack all of us, which you can do, we shall go. But you will not solve your problem. You will fight yourselves for those few jobs. Are we together? And then you will force us to come back. Because we are your parents, we will not want to see you killing this. You say, no, stop, if that's the case now, I'm in charge. Then you will force me out of retirement. Are we together? Please, when we talk of analysis, we are talking about serious things. Don't get carried away by those pedestrian analysts. You know pedestrian thinking? Somebody who thinks that like a pedestrian. Don't be like that. Look at the big picture. What's the real problem? Don't be emotional. Remember the principles? No, don't be emotional. It's not going to help you. And even if there are some jobs, if now you went and you applied for some jobs, they may not take you. And when you ask them why, you discover they discover you are not ready for the job. So therefore, my advice to you is do 2 things. Do scientific analysis to understand the national problem as you build yourselves and your capacity to take charge. But also prepare yourself at a personal level. So that when a job becomes available, people should come looking for you to say, hey, where is this one? That's the field. Come. Can you apply? They will now demand that you apply. And on the final note on that one, I want to inform you that when I look at this table here, all of us here, is there any of us who applied for this job today? We didn't apply. That should also make you think. Because there are situations where people, your country will demand that you come and serve. Can you build yourself to that level where you are a useful person to your country? And your country will follow you. Come. They will call you from the back. Say, come. You are the one. But when you are part of the general happiness, people will see you and say, good morning. And say, you continue looking for the person they are looking for. Don't be general happiness. Be a shining star amongst the so many. And you will find yourself within the system. That youth, money, even when they are called to come for certain things, they demand for money. Now, this is part of the problem that has been created. Many years ago, General here will tell you, when the early years, when we were in government, in the 90s, we were different. Ugandans had reached a point where I used to be called when people would want me to go and talk to them, and all of us, whenever they would want any of us to go and talk to them, they would call us. When you tell them, I don't have fuel, they would ask you, how much is the transport? We shall give you transport, but you can't. People used to look after us, to enable us to go and talk to them. But when NGO started, when the other operation of Macaulization started, things changed. They began offering money. People calling people for seminars and offering money. Now Ugandans have become different. That you must pay them in order to help. It's like this other fellow who goes to hospital. He's suffering from malaria. The doctor wants to inject him. He says, you pay me first. That's the situation we're in. Because like now here, you are young people being prepared for responsibility. When you are at university, some of you, aren't you paying for yourself? Aren't you? Yes, you're paying to learn. I don't know whether when the commissioner calls you also to teach you, whether now the situation is different, that you must demand for an allowance. But this is what my daughter was talking about. People have changed, and we must sit down and discuss these things as we learn. Where are we going? We should go back to those days when we loved knowledge, and knowledge was sought for, and we could even sacrifice for the sake of knowledge. This situation has been created in order to kill us. And somebody was talking about Ugandans with good ideas that they are. I remember that question, was it? Earlier on. That some ideas were good, but they are killed and so on. Well, it's also partly true. I know from many years ago, there was a young boy in the Mengo SS who, in his own unguided mind, he didn't know much physics, but he came up with some idea. And he decided to rig a motor vehicle engine to a certain contraption, which he called a helicopter. And it was turning. It even lifted off the ground for about 2 meters. But it was an extremely dangerous contraption. And we all got interested in it and went and looked at it and the thing. And we were excited. Said, if Ugandans can come with such ideas, if these ideas can be incubated, maybe we may reach that level some years down the road, maybe manufacturing some of these things. A few years later, I asked one day, I said, but where is this young man? I was told that he was picked by some people, they went and visited him at home. And as I'm talking now, he's a citizen of the United States of America. It's good. And they do that, they continue to do that. Germany was going to be the first country to produce a nuclear weapon. But the chaps, the Jews, they happened to be Jews, who were working on the science of nuclear energy and weapons. The Americans pilfered them away from Germany. Unfortunately for Germany, Hitler was busy killing Jews, so it was easy to persuade these geniuses to relocate to America. And they relocated to America, and as you know, the result of that is that the United States was the first country to use an atomic weapon. So it's not something new, it's not something which you should be surprised about. It's rather, how do we prepare ourselves to fight these very unfair situations in the world? Mentoring should be continuous. I can only agree with you. But as we agree, let us organize. I think, Solomon, you and your team, this is where you need to. As you may not know, but Solomon and the other young people know. For us, we are available. But I didn't know you until Solomon brought me here to see the young men. That's how I've known you. I didn't know a single one of you was here. I didn't come to see you as a person. I came to see young people and to talk to you. So, take the initiative. We are available. And once again, I thank the Commissioner for initiating this. It is a very
Asante sana.
But on that one, please learn to to push. In this world, not everything will be given unto you. Don't sit there and say, but these people can't. They say, I'm sitting here, I need some food. No. Get up and go to the cafeteria and pick a plate. Let them chase you from there that this is not your meal. But show that you are interested. Are we together? If you are going to Ginger and you don't have transport, don't sit on the roadside. Nobody will give you a lift. Start Go to one day, walk. Yusuf Lule, Ginger Road, face Ginger, walk. Somebody will find you and stop and say, hey, you look like you're going somewhere. Where are you going? Ginger, oh, come, I give you a lift. But if you sit on the roadside, we shall pass. And you will give this. But when these people see like I'm here waiting for front of me, that's not how the world is. Show that you are working for something. Take initiative, and it's likely that you will get a chance to be assisted. Otherwise, thank you very much. I will, as part of the communication from me through Solomon, I think Solomon will also give them my email and the contact numbers so that this conversation can continue. For us, we are available. We are here for you. We like to ensure that as we hand over to you, you don't take us back to the days of Idi Amin. You are not there. I can assure you those were bad days. Some of you, like you, would have slept in Babu's today. You have been looking at me since that was enough to cause you problem. Why are you looking at me? So those days, things were not like this. At least you have the opportunity that we talk. Maximize this opportunity, prepare yourselves, and handle your country properly once it's handed to you.
Asante sana. Yongeza tena.
Thank you, sir. As he has said, we shall continue the conversation on different media platforms. But also, as I hinted to you, we can have in-house maybe